हरे कृष्णा। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। So welcome back to the third day of the part 3 of this course, Rediscovering Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, which is based on the book Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. So we are doing a little detailed overview of this book, where certain details I am quickly going through or skipping, but wherever concepts are involved, we are discussing little detail. So currently we are discussing the second wave of the eastern section of this book, and we are in the 12th topic, where we are discussing the Angas of devotional service. This is the longest section within a particular wave, the 64 limbs. So in that, yesterday we completed till the 11th limb. The first 10 are the do's and the next 10 are the don'ts. So in the do's, we have already seen Guru Padashraya, Shri Krishna Dikshadi Sikshanam, taking Siksha and Diksha from the Guru, serving the Guru with great respect and affection, Vishrambena Guror Seva, Sadhu Vartmanu Vartanam, following the scriptural rules as guided by Guru Sadhu and Shastras, Sadharma Pracha, approaching a Guru and inquiring about the true meaning of life and how one can practice bhakti properly. Then, Bhogadi Tyaga Krishnasya Hetave, willingness to give up a life of sense gratification and willingness to utilize the time, energy and resources in Krishna's service. Nivaso Dwarakadavva Gangaderapi Sannidau, willingness to reside in a holy place, a holy dham like Dwaraka or Mathura or Vrindavan, or on the banks of a holy river where one can, which are very favorable for remembering Krishna. Yavad Artha Anuvartita, accepting only things which are minimally required to properly practice bhakti. Harivasara Sammano, observing days which are very dear to Krishna like Ekadashi and Janmashtami etc. with great endeavor. And then we also saw Dhatri Ashwattadi Gauravam, giving respect to plants and trees and people connected to Krishna, like Brahmanas, cows, the peepal tree, the Amalaki tree and so on. These were the 10 do's and the 10 don'ts, of which we discussed number 1 and one of the most important, which is consciously trying to avoid the non-devotional association. We had a fairly elaborate discussion on this theme. So now we will move on to the 12th limb of devotional service, which is Shishyadi Ananubandhitvadi Trayam. So the next 3 limbs are given in one verse only in Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, which is accepting too many disciples who may not be qualified to become disciples, just to increase the number. This is one thing. And second is reading Bahugrantha Kalabhyasa Vyakya Vada Vivarjanam, reading too many non-Krishna conscious books for making a living or to just challenge and defeat others. And the third is na aramban, maha arambadi anudyama, not being engaged in too much strenuous undertakings which may not be non-Krishna conscious, which will take all of one's time and energy away from actually serving Krishna. So these 3 are mentioned in one verse in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni's teachings to Yudhishthir Maharaj. He says, न शिष्यान् अनुबध्नीत ग्रन्थान् नैवाभ्यसेत् बहून् न व्याख्यामुपयुञ्जीत नारम्भानारभेत् क्वचित्. He says, na shishyan anubadnita. A sannyasi must not be eager to make unqualified disciples, because ultimately the guru has to be spiritually potent to handle the karma and the heavy conditionings of the disciples, because if the guru is not spiritually potent, then it affects the spiritual life of the guru and the disciple both. So therefore one has to be very careful and not get into the whole number game. Na eva bahun grantan abhyased. Nor should he unnecessarily read books that disrespect the Lord. So one has to be very careful and discriminative. So this we have already discussed in non-devotional association, but still it's a subject matter which is worth pondering. So one has to be very careful about what one is reading, because there could be many kinds of self-help books which are written by authors who may not even be necessarily theistic. They may be atheistic also. So such readings can have sort of different effect, because many of these, according to Bhagavad Gita, there are 5 causes of success of a particular activity. When an activity is performed, there are 5 things that could contribute towards success of that activity. Krishna says, Adhishtanam tata karta karanam cha pratak vida, vividascha pratak cheshta daivam chaivatra panchamam. He says 5 causes of success. Adhishtanam means the body or the place where we perform that activity. It has a very powerful effect on the result. Just like even in a cricket match, you can see that if it's a home pitch where you are surrounded by your home fans, then that kind of support and your familiarity with the pitch actually gives you a great advantage to win that particular match. So that is one. And also the body. The gross body has to be conducive. Adhishtanam, that is one. Tata karta. So karta means what is one's upadhi, what is one identifying as. Like if someone may have a good voice, but if he is not identifying himself as a singer, as a potential singer, then he will not endeavor in that direction. Like someone could be parallelly good in studies and good in singing, let's say. It depends on how his career will go. To a large extent depends on his upadhi. If he identifies himself as I'll be the topper in my school, if that is his identification, then he will go in that direction. He may become an engineer or a doctor, or he might get into the Indian Institute of Technology, whatever. Or if he sees himself as I can potentially be a classical singer or a playback singer in movies or whatever it may be. So if he has that upadhi to a large extent contributes in what direction he will put his endeavor. So therefore this is karta, second contributing factor to success of a particular activity. And the third is karanam. Karanam means the senses. The senses should be favorably endowed for accomplishing that particular activity. So if the senses may not be favorably endowed, a person may have -2 or -3 myopic vision, and if he is trying to enter into the Indian defense, then they will immediately reject him because the senses are not favorable. So myopic vision is not appreciated. So therefore, this is karanam, the third cause of success of a particular activity. The fourth is cheshta, vividascha pratak cheshta. Cheshta means endeavor. So one may have the perfect body, perfect senses, and he may have that karta bhav also in that direction, but he may not endeavor in that direction. So if he does not put sufficient endeavor, then he may not get the result. And the fifth factor that contributes to success of a particular activity is actually daivam. The most important factor is whether his karma would allow him to succeed in that particular direction. So there are these 5 factors. So this is from the Bhagavad Gita's point of view, and this is a very holistic approach. This is reality. But a particular self-help book, and this is a theistic understanding also. So, but a particular self-help book may not consider all the factors. They may just pump the karta bhav of that particular person, and they may push him to endeavor harder and harder. So these 2 activities, these 2 things a self-help book may do, but it does not generally consider the other 3 factors so favorably, which are real contributors. Because sometimes the karma may be so strong that it is like, sometimes the situation may be like, if I am asked to pull a 25 kilogram gunny bag of rice, the harder I pull, the faster it will move. Or the harder I pull, it will move very easily. But if I am asked to push against a wall, the harder I pull, the faster I will become tired. Because if the karmic factor is extremely against the success of that particular activity, then actually success is not proportional to my effort. Actually, frustration is proportional to my effort. The more I put effort, the more I will get frustrated, because the result will not be proportionate to the effort that I put. So therefore, Bhagavad Gita is the true self-help book which actually gives a holistic understanding of success. When one has this holistic understanding of success, then one will neither be puffed up that he has become, he has become successful. It will keep him grounded, because he will understand that there are 5 factors contributing to success, and I am just one of them. And if he is a failure, he will not get unduly depressed about it, because he will understand that I am just one contributing factor. There are 4 other factors which may be against. So therefore, I don't have to feel necessarily so bad thinking that I am a useless person. This is real self-help. So therefore, if one unnecessarily reads too many non-Krishna conscious books, then it can potentially affect his Krishna consciousness. The third is, he should not engage in big projects which distract him from his spiritual goals. So these 3 are not vague, these 3 are very clear in presentation. Yudhishthir Maharaj, Narada Muni presents it, or the Acharyas explain these 3 terms in a very clear way, that one should not maha arambadi anudyama. One should not engage in so many projects which may actually distract a person from progressing on the path of Krishna consciousness. So, Srila Jiva Goswami writes, this rule means that one should not accept unqualified disciples. Okay, but qualified disciples can be accepted and should be accepted, otherwise how will the parampara continue? So therefore, Narada Muni is teaching this to Yudhishthir Maharaj, but Narada Muni himself had so many disciples. So Narada Muni is such an exalted person that he would not speak something which he himself is contradicting through his actions. So therefore, Sishyadi Ananubanditvam should be understood to be, one should not be attached to making too many unqualified disciples just for the purpose of increasing the number. That is the meaning. If the rule was literally followed and no disciples were made, then the sampradaya would be destroyed because there would be no lineage. Consequently, there would be appearance of false knowledge. If proper sampradaya teachings are not there, if there are no bona fide qualified disciples continuing the lineage, then what would be the source of bona fide knowledge? Thus, the rule that a devotee should not be attached to making disciples actually means that the devotee should not accept unqualified disciples in order to increase the numbers in one's own sampradaya. Sometimes we see people, there is a big satsang program, and whoever has attended those 7 days saptaha, they are mass initiated. Without even the guru getting to know who the disciple is, who is he, and whether the person is willing to follow or not, whoever is sitting in that pandal, they will get mass initiation. That is not the way the Guru Sishya Parampara works actually. The injunction that one should not study many scriptures means that one should not study scriptures other than Vaishnava scriptures, scriptures opposed to Bhagavatam. If there are scriptures opposed to Bhagavatam, one should not study. Which are the scriptures opposed to Bhagavatam? Oh, this we do not know. So better study only Bhagavatam. Or other books which have been commented by our Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas who have had great regard for Bhagavatam, we can study those scriptures. Because if you see, the nature of Bhagavatam is Bhagavatam's message is very unique. Bhagavatam has come with a specific message, and the other books may not have that kind of a focus of message. Like for example, all the other, in many of the other Puranas, the Bhagavad Purana is glorified. One of the Puranas, like for example Matsya Purana says, oh, Bhagavatam is that scripture in which the story of Vritrasura is mentioned. Now if you see, is Bhagavatam the only scripture in which the story of Vritrasura is mentioned? No. There are many scriptures which talk about the story of Vritrasura. Rigveda talks about it. But in all the other presentations, in that story of Vritrasura, the real hero is Indra. Indra, it is victory of the divine over the demoniac. There is no consideration of devotion. So Indra is the true hero in all the other presentations of the episode between Indra and Vritrasura. But Bhagavatam gives a completely different, unique presentation. Anyone reading the story of Vritrasura and Indra based on Bhagavatam's 6th canto presentation will not have even an iota of doubt as to who is the true hero of this episode. The true hero of this episode is clearly Vritrasura. Even though he lost the battle, Indra killed Vritrasura. But Vritrasura came out as the undisputed champion because of the devotional sentiments that he expressed. So it is never, the purpose of Bhagavatam is never to present victory of dharma or adharma, but the purpose of Bhagavatam is to present the victory of pure devotion over anything that is semi-devotional or non-devotional. So in the case of Bhagavatam's presentation of this episode between Indra and Vritrasura, Indra becomes ashamed seeing who is the devotee and who is the demon here. Vritrasura came out as such an unblemished hero in that whole episode. And the episode of another example, Vamana Dev and Bali Maharaj. Bhagavatam is not the only scripture which talks about this episode. There are many literatures which talk about Vamanadev and Bali Maharaj. But in all the other presentations, the hero, the true hero in that whole episode is actually Vamanadev, who conquered the demoniac Bali Maharaj. But Bhagavatam's presentation is totally different. In Bhagavatam's presentation, there are two heroes. And if you read the presentation, we might be inclined to actually declare Bali Maharaj as the true hero. The real heart of Bali Maharaj, the devotion of Bali Maharaj is brought out in such a dramatic, scintillating way actually. Literally, anyone reading the episode of Bali Maharaj and Vamanadev from the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, their hairs will stand on end. Seeing Bali Maharaj's surrender, Atma Nivedanam. So Bali Maharaj's Atma Nivedanam, his devotional surrender, that is the focus of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is not focusing on Bali Maharaj fighting on the side of the demons. How subsequently Vamanadev surrendered to Bali Maharaj's love and became a gatekeeper in the Sutala planet. That is the focus of Srimad Bhagavatam. So there may be similar books which talk about the same episodes, but they may not have this consistent focus that Srimad Bhagavatam has towards constantly glorifying the path of pure devotional service over anything else. There is no glorification of dharma, artha, kama, moksha in Srimad Bhagavatam. There is only glorification of bhakti. And that is the path that we have accepted. That's why we are sitting here and discussing Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So therefore, any book which is opposed to these conclusions of Srimad Bhagavatam, even though they may be Vedic literatures, we don't criticize them, but we may not necessarily seek for our self-nourishment through those books. So therefore, this is the conclusion. So, and therefore, he is very clear here. Jiva Goswami is not mincing words here. He is very clear. He says, the injunction that one should not study many scriptures means that one should not study scriptures other than Vaishnava scriptures, which are scriptures opposed to Srimad Bhagavatam. Very clear. The injunction about big projects should be similarly interpreted. Big projects pleasing to the Lord can be undertaken, and traditionally our acharyas have undertaken huge projects, like we discussed before about the project of building the Govinda Dev temple in Vrindavan, which was arguably at that point the tallest temple in the whole of India, at least, maybe in the whole world. But eventually Aurangzeb got very envious and he broke 5 floors of that Govindji temple. So, and Madan Mohan temple was built under the guidance of Srila Sanatan Goswami. So in our Sampradaya, it's not that the Acharyas did not engage in such projects for the pleasure of Krishna. They did do it, but it didn't distract them away from their core devotional practices. So therefore one should ask for oneself, yes, I may be engaged in big projects, but is it diverting me away from my basic sadhana and my commitment towards my Guru, or is it enhancing and enthusing me more and more in that direction? So that is like the litmus test we have to see. Okay, so this brings us to the end of these 3 items. Reading too many books which are non-Krishna conscious just for the purpose of making a living or to defeat others in an argument, like that, and making too many unqualified disciples just to increase the numbers in the parampara. And the third is undertaking projects, huge projects which may distract us from our basic Krishna conscious practices. This is 12, 13 and 14. These 3 are don'ts. 11, 12, 13, 14. 4 don'ts we have already seen. The fifth don't, the 15th limb is vyavahare api akarpanyam. Not feeling miserable and not performing degrading acts in distressing circumstances. So, he is giving an example from the Padma Purana. So he says, Alabdeva vinashteva bhaksha chadana sadhane aviklabamatir bhutva harim eva diya smaret. So he says, aviklabamatir bhutva, one should be undisturbed. Alabde, when one does not attain bhaksha achadana sadhane. Bhaksha is food, achadana is clothes. So this is especially relevant to today's COVID situation. We all over the world, people are losing jobs, people are into financial situations. But here, Srila Rupa Goswami is giving some valuable advice. Aviklava matir bhutva, please be undisturbed. Because the nature of material happiness or distress is agama apayino anityaha tam stitikshasva bharata. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agama apayino anityaha tam stitikshasva bharata. The nature of material happiness or the nature of material distress is such that it comes and it goes, and it never stays permanent. So Krishna says, if you can tolerate, then you will make spiritual progress. So that is what he is telling, that alabdeva vinashteva. So practically everyone in this world are struggling at different levels due to this current COVID situation. And some devotees may be struggling even at this level which is mentioned here in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, maybe even for food and clothing. So, Harim eva diya smaret, one should remember the Lord with one's intelligence. Understanding that Krishna is putting me in this situation so that I can learn some valuable lessons in my spiritual life. Not that one should not endeavor in the direction of changing the situation. Not that one should stop working and say this is what Krishna wants me to do. Not in that sense. As we saw, there are 5 causes of success of an activity. Adhishtanam tatakarta karanam cha pratagvida vividas cha pratak cheshta daivam chaivatra panchamam. 5 causes, the body, the senses, and the karta bhav, our identification or upadhi, and the cheshta, the endeavors that we make. And the 5th one is karma for non-devotees, and for devotees it is karuna, compassion of the Supreme Lord. And that compassion may come sometimes in the form of distress, material distress, or the compassion may come in the form of material happiness. So in both ways Krishna gives, but if we are convinced that we are under the loving shelter of Krishna, then even though in apparent distress we can handle them gracefully. Because we will know that we were discussing the other day that Krishna, he is giving distress. One of the aspects that we saw, that Krishna's distress is only, it remains only till the time one Krishna's purpose is fulfilled. Krishna's purpose is to bring that person one step closer to his lotus feet. As soon as that purpose is fulfilled, Krishna will withdraw that suffering from that devotee. That is one of the symptoms that we saw of Krishna's suffering. How do we differentiate between suffering due to karma and suffering due to karuna? Krishna's karuna. And the second difference between suffering due to karma and karuna is that karmic suffering may take us to extremes, like it may take us to hellish suffering. in one of the hellish planets. But Krishna, even though may give suffering, but he will never take it to such an extreme that even remembrance of Krishna becomes very difficult. So if we are suffering, then we should understand that it is within our capacity to favorably remember Krishna. If we favorably remember Krishna, then Krishna's purpose is accomplished. When that purpose is accomplished, then Krishna may remove that suffering. Or if that suffering does not go, then Krishna may have a greater purpose. Maybe he wants to accelerate our progress to such a degree that in this lifetime only he may want to take us back home, back to Godhead. So if we have that perspective of looking into our even reversals in life, then it can help us accept reversals in such a graceful way that we will make Krishna proud. Oh, I am proud of this devotee. See, this is how one should accept reversals. That is why it is mentioned, Jiveta yo mukti padesa dayabak. So such a person is truly the heir apparent for Krishna's grace. Who is truly qualified for Krishna's grace is one who is seeing reversals in such a graceful way. So, vyavahare api akarpanyam, not feeling miserable and not performing degrading acts and distressing circumstances. This injunction applies to the devotee practicing smaranam. This is another point of view. While he is practicing smaranam, if the favorable remembrance is not coming, one should not resort to degrading activities. But if he is engaged in archanam, then if a good quality ingredient for the archana process is not available in one particular shop, then he does not think, oh, maybe it is Krishna's desire that he wants himself to be bathed in third class honey. One should not think like that. So this is for those activities which are smaranam. But in activities like archanam, if good quality honey is not available in one place, then we try to get the best quality that we can purchase and offer it to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here it is mentioned, the devotee absorbed in service, however, will perform service corresponding to the material he obtains, and thus he will make efforts to obtain those items if those items are not present. So if the devotee is engaged, say, in construction, and if sufficient cement is not available, then he should not think that, oh, maybe it's Krishna's desire, even though I am supposed to put 200 kilograms of cement in this construction, but I have only 2 kilograms. Maybe it is Krishna's desire that I should make this construction only with 2 kilograms of cement. He should not think like that. That would be ridiculous. It should be understood that this injunction also means that he should not perform low actions with prominence of begging and such, like that. So as far as possible, he should not resort to unbecoming actions just for completing that particular activity. Then the 16th limb or the 6th item in the category of don'ts is shokadi avashavartita, not succumbing to extreme emotions like lamentation. Because under extreme emotions, we will not be able to favorably remember Krishna. So this is some wiring that we need to internally do. So he quotes a verse from Padma Purana. He says, Shokamarshadi birbhavair akrantam yasya manasam katam tatra mukundasya spurti sambhavana bhavet. So he says, Katam, how is it possible Mukundasya spurti sambhavana bhavet? How is it possible for Mukunda to appear, for want to even remember Mukunda in the mind, yasya manasam shokamarshadibir bhavaihi akrantam. How is it possible for Mukunda to appear within the mind of that person whose mind has been completely overtaken by extreme emotions like lamentation, anger, lust, etc. So therefore, emotions also start out and then they slowly peak. So we should understand that just like, for example, someone was showing me a video of, during the Second World War, what used to be the type of advertisements or something that they would show in, I think it was United States of America. So it was all black and white, and they would show like what you should do in case there is some bombing outside. Because so they were showing, if you are sitting in a classroom, how you should crouch yourself and go just below their desk, like that. Those type of drills. And sometimes we have fire drills also, especially if you are living in a building where which is prone to catch fire or something like that. Once in a while, maybe once in a month or once in 2 months, there are frequent fire drills. They in ships and other such places, they ring the false alarm and then they observe how prepared are people for in the eventuality of a fire accident. Because if we are not mentally prepared, then suddenly when the fire comes, then people don't know what to do. So in the same way, Rupa Goswami is warning us, see, this eventuality on a daily basis or at least on a regular basis, we will be put into such a situation. We will be pushed into extreme emotions. Therefore, he is putting it as a limb of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, which means consciously practice it. Before the emotion becomes extreme, understand what is that it is unfavorable to allow that emotion to go towards the extreme. Before it reaches extreme, see if you can do something to pacify that emotion before, it could mean just leave that place immediately before the situation aggravates, or maybe drink a glass of water, whatever works. Do it so that you don't allow that emotion to peak. Why we don't want to allow that emotion to peak? Because I will not be able to favorably remember Krishna. And I might end up committing an offense also. And all these things will compromise on the speed of my advancement in Krishna consciousness. So with that motive, one should, here Rupa Goswami is telling, extreme emotions are not favorable. So see, be battle prepared all the time. Any time as you may be put into a situation where it may be an emergency situation which with ample scope for our mood swinging into an extreme emotion. So if we are prepared for it from the beginning, then it is possible that we may be able to sort of put some roadblocks. We may have some realistic plans for stopping it from escalating into a extreme emotion. So that is what he is telling. Shoka amarshadibir bhavair akrantam yasya manasam katam tatra mukundasya spurti sambhavana bhavet. So Mukunda spurti sambhavana, favorable remembrance of Mukunda within the mind is not possible if the mind is completely preoccupied with extreme emotions. So therefore, we should have realistic plans of not getting drifted into the realm of extreme emotions. So these are practices. These are things which Rupa Goswami is expecting sadhakas to actually practice like that. That is why it is mentioned as one of the limbs of Vaidhi sadhana. If it is a limb of Vaidhi sadhana means it has to be practiced with endeavor, which means cultivation. It should be cultivated like that. So this is the 16th limb or the 6th unfavorable limb of devotional service. Unfavorable limb which needs to be avoided. 17th is Anya Devan Avagya. Anya Deva Avagya, not disrespecting the devatas. So even though we have already seen that one of the offenses, the second offense to the holy name is to consider the demigods to be equal to or independent of Lord Vishnu. That is definitely an offense towards Lord Vishnu, but that does not mean we don't even give the basic respect that is due to an exalted Vaishnava to the demigods. The demigods are all very exalted Vaishnavas, very strongly empowered personalities. So we have to give them the respect that is due to such great personalities. We may not worship them as the supreme personality of Godhead, but that does not mean we can disrespect them also. So he is again quoting a verse from the Padma Purana. Harireva sadaradya sarva deveshwareshwarah itare brahma rudradya navagneya sad kadachana. He says, Harir eva sada aradya. Of course, one should always worship Lord Hari. Who is Lord Hari? Sarva Deva Ishvara Ishvaraha. He is the Lord of the Master of all the Devatas. The Master of all the Devatas, you may say, is Brahma or Lord Indra. But he is Sarva Deva Ishvara Ishvara. He is the Lord of the Master of all the Devatas. Harir eva sada aradya. And such a personality should be always worshipped. But na avagneyaha kadachana. One should never disrespect itare brahma rudradya. The other devatas such as Brahmaji, Lord Shiva and others, they should not be disrespected. Both are great Vaishnavas, greatly empowered personalities. Both are Sampradaya Acharyas. And even the other demigods are far more empowered than all of us. And the Supreme Lord has chosen them to empower them. So they have to be given that respect, and we cannot disrespect the Devatas. Of course, we may not necessarily offer them the same kind of worship that we offer to Lord Vishnu. We may not honor the prasadam which is directly offered to them, but that does not mean we can disrespect them. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself visited some of the demigods' temples and offered his respects to the Devatas, the respect that is due to very exalted Vaishnavas. So therefore one should be very careful and not disrespect the demigods. Then the 18th limb of devotional service, or the 8th don't, is Bhuta Anudvega Daita, not inflicting pains on other living entities. So this comes, what to speak of inflicting pain on other living entities, we should curb it at the stage of disrespect only. We can't even disrespect living entities. We had an elaborate discussion on this while discussing Vaishnava Ninda, how we try to understand that an attitude of disrespect acts as the foundation for offenses. So therefore, if we cannot cultivate a generic or a general attitude of respecting all living entities, then it is very, very probable that we will end up offending Vaishnavas. Because a strong culture of disrespect indicates severely depleted immunity with respect to avoiding offenses. So we have to be very, very careful. So therefore, what then to speak of inflicting injuries or pain to other living entities? So he quotes this verse from the Mahabharata. Piteva putram karuno nodve jayati yojanam vishuddhasya rishikeshas turnam tasya prasidati. This is one of the qualities which is very dear to Lord Rishikesha. He says, Vishuddhasya, that pure person, means devotee, yaha janam na udvejayati, who does not inflict pain to others, not inflicting pain on others, piteva putram karuno, but he is trying to be merciful towards all living entities, just like a father would be merciful to other. So one of the devotees, very senior devotees in ISKCON, in one of his farm projects, there is a huge Goshala, and he has personally grown up in Krishna consciousness taking care of cows. So in instruction to his disciples and those taking care of the Goshala, he clearly indicated protecting cows does not just mean to protect them from getting slaughtered in the slaughterhouses. Taking care of cows means showering them with so much affection that they feel completely happy and satisfied living here. And that happiness and satisfaction is indicated by how willing are the cows to interact with the human beings who come to the Goshala to serve them. So if they are very, very eager to rush towards human beings because they have always experienced loving affection in the form of giving them some food to eat, or rubbing them, scratching them, massaging them, removing the ticks which may bite them, removing it from them. If that is the only experience they have had with human beings, then naturally when someone opens the gate and approaches them, they will come running to us. So the symptom of whether that particular facility or a Goshala is the people taking care of the cows are really taking care of the cows is indicated by how eager the cows are for human touch, because they have only experienced loving touch. That is the symptom of taking care of cows. So like that, so it is not just protecting them from getting slaughtered, but actually how much we are giving them a very joyful experience while they are here with us, like that. So one should have a natural, one should not just refrain from inflicting pain on others, but one should be piteva putram karuno. One's disposition towards anyone who may be inferior to us or dependent on our mercy, we should treat them like a father, a loving father would treat his son, like that. 19th is again a theme which we have discussed in detail. Of course, this was in the other course. 2 parallel courses are going on, so I am getting really confused where I spoke what, because both are similar books about our day-to-day practice of sadhana. So I am getting confused where I spoke what. So Seva Nama Aparadha Varjanam has been discussed in detail in the other course, self-evaluation tools on the path of bhakti. So while discussing about the aparadhas, we have discussed this in detail. So I will not go too much into detail. So Seva aparads are inadvertent mistakes which may happen during our performance of various kinds of services. And nama aparads, and they are many in number. There are two or three lists that Srila Rupa Goswami gives. One from the Padma Puran, another from the Varaha Puran. Like one list has about 32 limbs, another list has about 25 odd seva aparads that have been mentioned. But the nama aparad from Padma Puran has 10 in number, which is commonly agreed, accepted, that we chant every day morning in our temples just after Shikshashtakam, we chant. So, seva nama aparada varjanam, avoiding seva and nama aparadas. So, for a little more detailed discussion on this subject matter, I would suggest that you refer to the other course where we have discussed about the aparadas. We have had a fairly long discussion on this. So, but here he quotes this verse from the Varaha Puran. He says, Mama archana paradaye kirtyante vasude maya vaishnavena sadate tu varjaniya prayatnatah. Vaishnavena varjaniya. A Vaishnava should carefully avoid Mama archana aparadaye, offenses towards serving my archamurti. Maya kirtayante. Maya kirtyante, as described by me. O Vasude, O Earth. So this is Varaha Puran, Varahadev addressing his consort, Mother Earth. Bhumi Devi is the consort of Varahadev. Sada, one should always try to avoid. Prayatnatah, with great care and effort, one should try to avoid the offenses towards the deities and other such things. So another verse he quotes from the Padma Puran, Sarva parada krid api muchyate hari samshrayah. If you commit offenses towards other offenses, by taking shelter of Lord Hari, muchyante, you can be freed. Harer api aparadan yah kuryad vipada pamshavah. But that person, that animal-like person who may commit offense even towards Lord Hari, Namashraya kadachit syat taratyeva sa namatah. By taking shelter of the holy name of Lord Hari, he can cross. So sometimes they quote this episode of how the Lord's name is more powerful than even the Supreme Lord. They quote this episode from Ramayana. So this is during the famous story, during the building of the bridge towards Lanka. So the monkeys are trying to build a bridge using solid stones, and then they are writing the name of Ram in that in those stones, and they are allowing it, and they are putting it in water, and they start floating. And Lord Ram is surprised, how can a stone float? So he takes one stone and keeps it on water, and it immediately sinks. Of course, this is just a pastime. It is not that Lord Ram is incapable of making a stone to float. He can make a stone to do anything. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But just to emphasize the glory of the holy name of the Supreme Lord, it is mentioned by the Acharyas that with great faith, the monkey army of Sugriva and Hanuman, they had so much faith in the holy name of the Supreme Lord that they wrote that name on the stones with great faith, and they allowed it to float, and it floated. So therefore, even by committing any other kind of offenses, by taking sincere shelter of Lord Hari, one can be freed from those offenses. But if one has that animalistic person, if he offends even that Lord Hari, then by taking shelter of the holy name of Lord Hari, he can be excused, purified. Namnopi sarva suhrudohi aparadat patatyadaha. But if one starts offending the holy name, then there is no antidote for it. Aparadat patatyadaha. Such a person, by offending the holy name, is sure to fall down. And as we saw, we won't get into details, the holy names are 10. Offenses to the holy name, Nama Aparad, are 10 in number. And Seva Aparads are many in number. We won't get into the detail of all of that. We will just see a sample of 10 Seva Aparads, which when committed unintentionally is very easy to nullify just by sincere chanting of the holy name or sincere performance of devotional service immediately nullifies those offenses. But if one purposefully with an improper attitude, disrespectful attitude performs them, then it no longer remains Seva Aparad, it becomes Nama Aparad. And Nama Aparad means severe consequences. So, few offenses we will see. This is not exhaustive list. The list is much more exhaustive as given in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but we will not go through all of them. Entering the Lord's temple in a palanquin or with shoes, we all know it is. But sometimes due to eagerness to take darshan of the Lord, a king may just enter the temple with a palanquin, or a person may just run into the temple with his shoes on out of natural eagerness to take darshan of the Supreme Lord. But when done intentionally, it becomes a Nama Aparad. Not observing the festivals of the deity is an offense. One may do it unintentionally also. Not offering obeisances in front of the Lord. Offering prayers to the Lord in an unclean state or after having eaten without washing properly. This is not. One can chant the holy names, but then when it comes to worship of the deities, showing respect to the deities, a particular level of decorum, cleanliness has to be followed. Offering respects with one hand. Sometimes, we don't want to offer obeisances. Sometimes we do all kinds of different things. We may instead of where Shashtanga Pranam has to be offered, we may offer Panchanga Pranam. Where Panchanga Pranam has to be offered, we may only half bend and not fully offer obeisances. Or sometimes you have to offer obeisances, but we may just touch the floor and put it on our head. See, if we are physically indisposed, that is a different thing. When we can physically very well offer obeisances, why do we have to touch the ground and put it on our head? Then Krishna may actually make us physically indisposed. Actually, to offer obeisances to Vaishnavas is actually a valuable treasure. The greatest of the Vaishnavas valued it so much. Sankhya Purvaka Nama Gana Natibi Kala Vasani Kritau. The 6 Goswamis had, just like we have 16 rounds to chant, they had 64 rounds, 192 rounds. Along with that, 1000 obeisances, 2000 obeisances per day. They had a count. What we value, we count it. The Acharyas valued offering obeisances, so they counted it, just like counting the holy names. And sometimes we don't even do that. We don't want to say the whole Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyavcha. Sometimes devotees wish each other by telling, Vancha, Prabhuji, like that. Or sometimes, after some time, even that becomes too much. They say, we, means Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyavcha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. And sometimes they don't even say we, they just show 2 fingers. So these are all may sound very funny, but in the long run, they may not be very favorable for our progress in devotional service. Because to offer obeisances to Vaishnavas is a valuable treasure. We are earning spiritual credits significant spiritual credits, because that is what our head is meant for, offering obeisances to the Supreme Lord and His dear servants. Circumambulating in front of the Lord, which means basically showing the back to the Lord, I think. Spreading the legs in front of the deity, so inadvertently, because we have been sitting and hearing the class for a long time, or we have some joint pain, we might just want to stretch our legs. We have to be careful not to stretch it towards the deities. Inadvertently, we may commit this mistake. Clasping the hands on the knees in front of the deities, like this, sitting in this way like that, not very favorable, it's not very good sadachar, good etiquette. Lying down in front of the deity, that is, even in front of an ordinary respectful person, we do not lie down. Eating in front of the deity is not very favorable. So these are small things which we can learn and try to follow, because when we are serving a great personality, there are certain decorum needs to be followed, at least while we are within the realm of practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, like that. Okay, so we have completed 19. I might as well complete 20th, and then I've already overshot time, but I will take a few minutes to complete the 20th, so that at least the first 20 limbs are over. So the 20th limb is not tolerating the criticism of the Lord or His devotee. Tad nindadi asahishnuta. So he quotes a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto. Nindam bhagavata shrenvam tatparasya janasya va tato napaiti yassopi yatyadat shukrutat chutah. So the verse says, Yaha na apaiti, one who does not leave that place immediately. Nindam shrenvan, after hearing the criticism. Bhagavatah tatparasya janasya va, criticism of the Supreme Lord or His surrendered devotees. If one does not leave that place immediately, saha, that person, yati adaha, he will certainly fall down from his devotional progress. Sukrutat chutah, being bereft of the pious credits, he will immediately fall down. So therefore, one should not tolerate the criticism of the Lord or His devotee. So then how should we respond to this criticism? Of course, one thing that is mentioned here is we should leave that place immediately. But a little more elaborate description is there in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Mother Sati speaking to her own father Daksha, who had severely offended his own son-in-law Lord Shiva, who was a very, very exalted personality. So unable to tolerate that insult, Mother Sati is going to give up her life. And now she is explaining why she is giving up her life. So she says, Karnau pidaya nirayadyada kalpa ishe dharma vitarya shrinibir nribirasya mane chindyat prasahya rushatim asatim prabuschet jihvam asonapitato visrajet sadharma. She says, dharma vitari, when the protector of religion, like my husband Lord Shiva, Ishe, a master, when a great personality, asyamane, when he is insulted, by whom? Asrinibir nribir, by uncontrollable people like you. How should we respond? When a great personality, when a controller of religion, dharmavitari, he is insulted by a indecent person like you, nirayad, one should immediately leave that place. Karnau pidaya, after blocking one's ears. Vishnu, one should block one's ears and immediately leave that place. But because of my attachment towards you, I didn't do it. Yad akalpa, if he cannot kill that person, if he is unfairly criticizing a great personality, and if we cannot kill that person, then we should immediately leave that place. Otherwise, one should die. Prabhu's ched, if it is possible, Chindyat prasahya rushatim asatim jihvam. One should forcibly pull out the tongue of that person who has criticized that great personality and cut that tongue. And then, asun api tato visirjait. And then because he has heard the criticism of that great personality, after cutting that person's tongue, he himself should die. Sadharmaha, that is real dharma. So now, we have heard too many things. What exactly are we supposed to do? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti commenting on this verse, he says, because the Kshatriya is qualified for punishing, he should cut out the tongue. So, pulling out the tongue and cutting it is meant for the Kshatriya. Among the other three varnas, not qualified to punish. So, a Vaishya, a Shudra and a Brahmana, they are not qualified to punish. Only a Kshatriya can punish. So, he can either kill that person or cut out his tongue. Okay. So, others should punish themselves, the other three, if they happen to hear. Because it is not proper for the Brahmana to give up his life, he should block his ears, remember Vishnu and go away. So, how should a Brahmana respond? He should block his ears, try to remember Vishnu and run away from that place. A Kshatriya, he should cut the tongue of that person or kill that person. And the other two, they should also run away, and if they cannot, they should give up their life. So in this way, hearing the criticism of other Vaishnavas make our heart completely hard and unofferable to Krishna. We will eventually become inimical towards Krishna also. So therefore, we should very carefully avoid hearing criticism about others. Nindanam, as they say, Nindanam dosha kirtanam. So, instead of doing Harinam Sankirtan, by hearing Ninda and by involving ourselves in committing that Ninda, we are doing dosha kirtanam. We are doing kirtan of other people's dosha. Very unfortunate situation. Okay, so this brings us to the end of the first 20 of the 64 limbs. These 20 are called the door to bhakti and are absolutely non-negotiable limbs. Under no circumstances we can criticize a Vaishnava. Under no circumstances we can commit seva or nama parad willingly. And under no circumstances we can willingly inflict pain on other living entities. So we have to be very careful to avoid these second 10 and to do the first 10 items. So in this way, we come to the end of the first 20 limbs, which are the door to bhakti. So when we meet tomorrow, we will start with the 21st limb, the other limbs, which are also important in devotional service. So thank you very much for your patient listening, and I apologize for going over time. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Rupa Goswami Pad ki jai, Srila Shri Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu Granth ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.